Well, good morning from the newest attraction on Texas's section of Old Route 66. I'm actually standing out here just days after this opened, and even though all you see are limousines behind me at the moment, what this place actually is the new Route 66 Bug Ranch. Now, everybody's heard of the Cadillac Ranch. We were there yesterday, but we couldn't get close enough because there were big puddles around the bases of the Cadillacs to actually paint on them. But the Slug Bug Ranch was a far less known attraction a few miles east of Amarillo that was added to the site of the old Longhorn Trading Post, I think it was called, which opened in 2002. And ironically, I was there just a few days after it originally opened. And now here I am at the brand new incarnation just after it opened on June 14th, 2024. Now, as you can see, this is a much more expansive site. You've got all these stretch limos back there. You have way more bugs than you used to. I think the original Slug Bug Ranch had 5, and by the way, they were built there to compete with, a big modern truck stop opening, get more visitors to the whole Longhorn Trading Post, but unfortunately, the Trading Post had closed in 2003, only a year after the slug bugs were there, so they never really got that much attention until the bugs were finally removed last year, and then everybody went, wait, what's going on? And I think that these 5 slug bugs right here on this curve, the ones that are the oldest and most beat up, I think these are the original ones from Conway, Texas. But it looks like the new Bug Ranch has added at least 9 more, in addition to at least 9 giant stretch limousines. So fresh, they still have their seats and glass and hoods dangling over us. And look at this, you got some grain silo things back here. There's all kinds of megalithic things for us to spray paint on. Granted, we're not here on the best day weather-wise and mud-wise, but it's pretty neat to see this attraction in its infancy as it's still kind of rising up out of the Amarillo mud. This new version of the Slug Bug Ranch is partially sponsored by the Big Texan Steakhouse we went to yesterday. It's located right next to the Big Texans RV park. Funny enough, for wrecked Volkswagens, it's actually, I think, sponsored by the local Amarillo Volkswagen dealership. Until a few months ago, there was all this debate on whether they were going to put them in Conway, whether they were going to be in Amarillo. So this is very last minute. And even though we couldn't get to Cadillac Ranch yesterday, we braved the mud to get to the brand new Slug Bug Ranch. Oh man, there's going to be spray paint all over this jacket. The wind is blowing it everywhere. Not my finest work, but this is tradition for me. I cannot visit Amarillo, Texas, or the Slug Bug, or the Cadillac Ranch without at least attempting a Route 66 shield. Oh my gosh, dude, London, look at all this. Look at all that. That's some Amarillo, that's some Texas mud right there. Yeah, not the best work I've ever done, but it'll do for now. It's rainy, it's wet, windy. That'll do, pig, that'll do. Oh yeah, we got a little random land action out here. It's actually hard to get to because of all this mud. It's super slippery and the sidewalk is flooded, but that's okay. We've helped to christen the brand new Bug Ranch in Amarillo, a sign of new life on Old Route 66. And now it's time for us to hit the road, because as we make our way eastward towards Oklahoma, there is a heck of a lot more to see. Just as we were leaving, I could see, thank you, Eddie Crutchfield. The Crutchfield family are the ones who owned the original Longhorn Trading Post and the original Bug Ranch, and lots of other people who have sponsored and helped, but sort of illegible right now. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll be back to check this place out again. We've been in windy, wet, miserable Amarillo all morning, so it's gonna feel good to blast down I-40 and at least get outside of town. Whew, that feels better. Now, obviously, we're not gonna be able to change the fact that it's super windy up here in the Texas Panhandle today, but at least supposedly we shouldn't run into too much more rain. All right, well, it was less than half an hour to our first stop, and this is where the Bug Ranch used to be. Welcome to Conway, Texas, and what until 2003 was the Longhorn Trading Post and Rattlesnake Ranch that opened back in 1967. It was run by the Crutchfield family, and I'm wondering if these are some of their family photos left in here, or if these are just random relics of the roadside. In 2002, when they first installed the Volkswagens, obviously, this place was still open. And up until last year, this is right where they were sitting. It's nice to see that there's still a couple of cars from obviously very different eras of Route 66 still sitting out here. But look at this. This is where those 5 slug bugs were once located. This was the original Slug Bug Ranch. Nothing left now. Here's some photos from this exact same spot in 2017. And as you can see today, you know, there's still some buildings here. I think the Crutchfield family still owns the property, and they're, you know, trying to stop the vandalism as much as they can. But look at this, nothing left to tell the tale of the 5 slug bugs. But at least it lives on in Amarillo. Now this obviously opened in the 1960s on the alignment of I-40. The interstate was being built across Texas. Old Route 66 is just a little farther down. It's always a little ways off I-40. Most people never come down along the original Route 66 alignment in Conway, but there are some, you know, decaying ruins of old gas stations. See a few remnants of old tourist courts and original motels from back in the 20s and 30s in people's backyards now. Today, that's what we're gonna be doing. We'll be on I-40 half the time, because half the time the modern interstate is built right on top of the original Route 66, but wherever we can get an original piece, we're gonna pull off the highway to get a slice. Case in point, watch this as the interstate goes off to the left, but we peel off to the right and roll into the old Route 66 town of Groom. Along the interstate in Groom, you've got the world's largest cross. We've been there before. You've got modern truck stops. But if you don't get off the interstate and actually roll down old Route 66 through Groom, then you miss seeing all the mid-century gas stations and old trucks, or the mid-century cafes here. I mean, there's an entire town here that you miss if you're just blasting through on the interstate. And for me, this is the point of a trip along Route 66, to see that other America you don't see if you're just going from McDonald's to Love's Truck Stop. Lord knows I love modern motels and modern conveniences too, but getting off on the main streets, seeing how people actually live here, going into their local little grocery stores and feed stores, that's how you get in contact with the real small town America. And it does take time. I mean, you need to have a road trip of months and months to have the time to go into every little small town along Route 66. It's not an affair of 2 weeks. But still, if you are gonna pull off the side of the highway to see small town America, then the pieces of old Route 66 up here in the panhandle of Texas are a good way to go. All right, and speaking of I-40 and the interstate, look at this. It's the Leaning Tower of Groom, Texas. This has become a sort of de facto Route 66 icon, but this wasn't actually built until the 1980s. Britain is a big family in this area. I think they have a big ranch. And this water tower, which by the way is leaning on purpose, was supposed to be the main attraction and sort of the focal point of a big truck stop complex. It was supposed to be built here. The truck stop was never actually completed, but the Britain, USA Leaning Tower of Groom, or as it's more commonly known, the Leaning Tower of Route 66, is still here to tell the story of a dream that almost happened. All right, we've actually got to get back on I-40 to the next town, but we don't have to go far before we find another old piece of the mother road. This is sort of an obscure piece. You have to look for an exit for Highway 70. That's how you'll know you'll find it, because otherwise there is no sign of old Route 66. There's no historic Route 66 this way. There's no nothing. But anyway, eventually, if you're really eagle-eyed, you might see this historical marker, because this, pretty much where we're standing, was the town of Jericho, Texas, and a once infamous stretch of Route 66 known as the Jericho Gap. Now, there was already like a ranch settlement out here, but Jericho really got started in 1902 as a railroad stop on the Chicago, Rock Island, and Gulf Rail Line. You know, there was ranching here. Obviously, the military would come through here sometimes, but it was pretty quiet until in 1926, Route 66 was formed, and they started connecting all these roads across the country from Chicago to LA, which includes this unlabeled farm road right here leading to the Jericho Cemetery. That's what's on that sign right there. And this road going back to Groom, and the other road across the highway, the one you can just barely see out there, these two roads connecting to the other towns on Route 66 were known as the Jericho Gap, or Jericho Gaps. And the Jericho Gap was absolutely infamous for being unpaved and so muddy. The mud here was so bad that those old early Model Ts and putt-putt automobiles were constantly breaking down and getting stuck in the mud, to the point where travelers often had no choice but to walk into the town of Jericho and hire somebody to come bring a truck and pull you out of the mud, and then obviously repair your car. Now, no exaggeration, this happened so often that in the 1920s and 30s, there were serious rumors. I don't know how this makes sense, but this is the truth. There were rumors that the townsfolk here, that the business owners in Jericho were actually watering down the roads to make it muddy on purpose. And so Jericho had a very dark reputation, that Jericho Gap out here. It didn't last long, obviously, till the paved roads came in about where I-40 is now. And then obviously the interstate meant that nobody came to Jericho anymore. In fact, when you type Jericho, Texas into your maps today on your cell phone, you get an entirely different part of the state. You get a whole different town. There is no town anymore. You're looking at it. Other than the cemetery down the way and a couple of abandoned farmsteads, what we are looking at is Jericho. Dude, and this is rad. I didn't even know if this would still be here, because Jericho is barely ever mentioned even in Route 66 guidebooks. But look at this, we're over a mile off the modern Interstate 40 here. You could just see a little bit of paving, the old sidewalk here. There's some crusty, windy sheet metal blowing in the breeze. This is what's left of an old tourist court. This was somebody's room for the night in Jericho. Look at this tiny little place. Can you believe it? Somebody might have been staying in this exact room here. After their car got stuck in the mud, they needed to wait for a wheel to come in from out of town, fix their car up. Oh, it looks like whoever they were having some cottage cheese in here. Obviously, somebody local has been somewhat taking care of this place. I mean, the family that ran this business might still be in the area because the grass is still being mowed. There's rattlesnakes around here. You got to be careful. Look at this. Oh, it's one of the old beds. Incredible. Wow, look at this. You've got 2 refrigerators, an old oven, and a sink in here. This might have been a common area for preparing meals. This might have been part of a cafe or part of the owner's actual residence. I have looked and looked, but it is so hard to find information about Jericho. I was trying to get in touch with anyone who might live around here, might know, might be related to someone that ran this place, but it's a challenge, let's put it that way. But here we are in the old Jericho Gap, and although there was never much here beyond, you know, farming and ranching stuff, there were at one time little motels and tourist courts and cafes and obviously auto mechanics. Look at this across the street. Was this someone's house? This could be the home of one of the old Jericho pullers, because it really does look like a house to me. It doesn't look like a cafe. Oh, there was a big old rattlesnake just inside that front door there. So we're not going to be entering that house. Stay back a bit. But yeah, that definitely looks like a house to me. Could have been a cafe in this big front room. Whew, that scared me. That's the first rattlesnake I've ever actually seen on Route 66 in an old abandoned building. I yelled so loud it scared London. Oh, well, that'll get your blood pumping. I see some old laundry things back there to hang dry your clothes. Oh, and look at that beautiful old car right there. Is that one of the ones that got stuck in the mud? We might never know. Nowadays, the big industry down here is wind farming, along with the crop growing and cattle grazing. So there's a few homes around, but so far, nobody's driven up. I was hoping, you know, maybe the property owner would see us out here and drive up, because lots of times that's how I get those cool stories no one's ever heard before. But it looks like today the only Jericho resident we're gonna meet was that rattlesnake. Woo, exciting times on old Route 66. Now, from what I understand, you know, you can't see the railroad line anymore. I don't think the trains even come through Jericho, but I believe there is an old slab, an old foundation for the railroad back somewhere in the fields. After seeing that rattlesnake though, I think I'm good on walking through the grass for now. All right, the Jericho Cemetery was down that road, County Road 12. Now, as you can see, there's a little jag right here. This is the continuation of that road, and that was the other side of the Jericho Gap leading on towards Alanreed. We're not going that way today. We're gonna get back on I-40. But we are going to the town of Alanreed, which, much like Jericho, well, less so than Jericho, is another ghost town along old Route 66. Now, right off the Alanreed exit from the interstate, you've got the old country store and post office, an old motel. It doesn't look all that promising, but if you keep going down the road itself, you find out that there is, in fact, a little town tucked away down here just out of sight of the interstate. And there's something amazing down there. It's the Alanreed 66 Super Service Station. This old Phillips 66 station and cafe was built by Bradley Kaiser in 1930 in what was then a bustling downtown Alanreed. It was restored in the early 2000s by a family from Amarillo, I think called the Cahoot family. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it's not run as a business, and as far as I know, they don't live here in town. They just restored it out of the goodness of their heart so there'd be something to see along old Route 66. They've got it all set up as Texaco, but I've always heard it was originally Phillips 66. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. But the other thing is that these gas stations sometimes change brands over the years. Either way, boy, is it beautiful looking. Oh man, I was hoping to use the men's room in there, but the door's locked. Now you can see behind it, the cafe has seen better days. Look at that Texas Route 66 hand painted on there. This might have been a service garage. Usually the garages go first because obviously the big garage door in the front, the biggest hole would fall down. Could have been part of the cafe, I'm not sure. That is one old bottle of Dr. Pepper broken down there. Just imagine the stories from back in this place. Ooh, and look at that beautiful old house across the street. Alanreed was founded in 1887, way before Route 66, and named after its first postmaster, Alan T. Reed. And at one time, it was a pretty darn busy place, but now, it's as quiet as the grave. It's definitely a ghost town. Few people still live here, but as you can see, it is sort of returning to the earth. I love spots like this because they're quiet. You can pull over for as long as you want to. Nobody bothers you. One guy pulled over, local guy, who took a picture of me in London for us over here and chatted for a bit, but that's about it. Look at this. Alanreed was so big at one time, they had sidewalks through this town. Shel Silverstein must have been here because this is where the sidewalk ends now, though, and look at that. No more buildings on the other corners downtown. This was Main Street. This down the road a little ways is an old collapsed, I think, Magnolia gas station. In fact, I think I could read that on the building. I don't know if you guys can see that through the tree branches, Magnolia. There's a big black dog running around behind this. I'm not sure if he's friendly or not. You can see where the awning collapsed that would have been over the original pump island. And look at the old front door, old Magnolia gas station, trees growing up through it. This one's wide enough, it probably also had a cafe. Just think of that. There's a handful of other occupied structures, some little houses and some buildings that could have been old service stations also, but otherwise, Alanreed is a pretty quiet place. Now, Alanreed is so small and there's no open businesses for Route 66 travelers that most of them just go right on by. But just down the road is another Route 66 town, a little better known, but which, even though it has more inhabitants and currently open businesses, is still pretty much a ghost town. So we're leaving Alanreed and its very friendly residents, and we're gonna blast our way down to McLean, Texas. It's not too far away. All these towns are pretty close to each other, but it's definitely worth pulling off the interstate for. Now McLean, or McLean, I've heard it pronounced both ways, was a town that was so big, had so much traffic coming through it, that you can see these two roads. These are both Route 66. It was one of those towns that was so busy they divided the eastbound side and the westbound side into two different streets. And it was big enough to have those roadside motels with those mid-century neon signs. Here's the Cactus Inn Motel. Dude, and how's that for an old neon sign? I mean, it's not neon anymore, but at least the outline survives. Check that out. One of the coolest things on the western edge of town is this, a restored 1929, very early Phillips 66 station, regarded as maybe one of the first ones in the Texas Panhandle. Supposedly this location was open for over 50 years, which means until at least 79. And then it was restored in 1992 by a local preservationist group, a local Route 66 group. And in fact, there is a Route 66 visitor center in McLean, Texas, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But look how beautiful this spot is. Look how clean and nice it is, nice and restored. I love the little Tudor cottage style early Phillips 66 stations. I mean, they're amazing, and it's amazing to see one in this good a shape. And it's just next to old downtown McLean, which has an absolutely fascinating connection that nobody ever talks about to the Titanic. Yes, that's right, Titanic, you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, that Titanic. Now this town started as a cattle loading station on the Chicago, Rock Island and Gulf Railway, but an English cattle rancher named Alfred Roe had an idea. He donated the land and laid out the town site of McLean, and even before Route 66 came along, it was a bustling little stop along the railroad in the panhandle of Texas. But sadly, just as the town was really starting to boom, Alfred Roe decided to leave town and go back for a visit to his native England. You can imagine when he got back there how he must have bragged about the new town he was founding and how it was springing up out of the middle of all this nothing out here. He certainly was proud of it. But here's the thing. When he tried to go back, he decided to book passage on the fanciest, newest, most unsinkable ship of them all. That's right, he was trying to get back to McLean, Texas on the Titanic. Alfred Roe was not one of the lucky guys who made it into a lifeboat, but he was one of the few, according to legend, that they actually found in the ice, clinging to his suitcase, floating in the Atlantic Ocean. And the legend goes that his gold watch was still ticking when they pulled him out of the ocean. That was back in 1912, so sadly, Alfred never lived to see Route 66 come through the downtown of his little city, a place that is absolutely Radiator Springs-like with its one blinking traffic light up here. I'm telling you, man, every third blink is slower. There's a couple little businesses and cafes and bars clinging to life down here, but obviously, as you can see, since the interstate came in, this is mostly shut up shop. The town was actually big enough that at one point they had this really cool movie theater here. I loved coming by and taking pictures of that back in the day. I used to dream of buying and restoring that old movie theater and only showing old monster movies or something, but sadly, it's gone the way of the buffalo. Like so many of the old brick buildings on Route 66, it became unstable and had to be torn down for safety reasons in 2017, not that long ago. This is part of why it's so close to my heart to film this stuff, and it was so important for me to bring my son London on this trip. Because as you can see, more and more of these towns are slowly disappearing. Not much is open in town today, but there's one epic stop in this town that is open for the Route 66 visitors. It's the Devil's Rope, and today, Route 66 Museum. But back in the day, it just used to say Devil's Rope Museum and all the signs and everything. And when I was in a touring band, we would never come here while it was open, and I'd just see signs, Devil's Rope Museum. What the heck is Devil's Rope? Well, now I know exactly what it is. The Devil's Rope is another name for barbed wire. That's right, there's a whole museum dedicated to it. After all, barbed wire is what tamed the West and allowed people to fence in their ranches and their farms and all that kind of stuff. People don't often think of barbed wire. These days, of course, they pay a lot of tribute to Route 66. I think it's the home of this part of Texas's Route 66 Association. It's a free museum. I've gone through it at great length in another video in the past. Definitely check out that whole playlist of Route 66 stuff we've got, because this museum is freaking awesome. And I'm super stoked that London is getting a chance to see it. You're coming through town, make it a point to stop at the Devil's Rope Museum. One of my favorite things in there is the Route 66 room, which also has original signs from a rattlesnake attraction in Alanreed. I always forget about that when I'm going through Alanreed. I'd spend a little more time here, but the museum's actually closing in 5 minutes. Yeah, me and my husband would like to get home, please.
Hurry up, boy, get out of here.
All right, geez, we're going. Because there's something else we gotta see on our way out of Texas. No time for these epic abandoned motels and weird buildings in McLean. We're gonna barrel down I-40 to our next stop, a town I'm really starting to love. Welcome to Shamrock, Texas. Now, there's almost 2,000 people in Shamrock. If everything else has been the ghost towns, then Shamrock has got the Glories for us. Now, Shamrock actually has a long and surprisingly complicated history, but basically it got started around the turn of the last century. And obviously you have all the usual pursuits out here, the railroad, the cattle ranching. It really took off and became a boomtown when in 1926, so the same year that Route 66 was coming across here, the Shamrock Oil Company struck it rich. So this became an oil boomtown as well. And the local residents have always leaned into the whole Shamrock thing, which means leprechauns, which means giant St. Patrick's Day parade. In fact, all the old postcards were very proud of their big St. Patrick's Day parades out here. So you have this weird mix of Irish imagery and cowboy imagery. And Shamrock was so big, so prosperous, and so successful at one time, both with the railroad boom, the oil boom, and then later with the Route 66 boom and their giant parades, that they actually managed to acquire a piece of the real, actual Blarney Stone. The Blarney Stone is a rock set into a tower in a 15th century Irish castle. There's all kinds of legends about it. It's a stone that Moses struck, or it was the stone that Jacob laid his head down on. But the folklore in Ireland is that if you kiss the Blarney Stone, you will always have the gift of gab. Now, I clearly have the gift of gab, but London, you've never been a big talker. See? So I brought you all the way out here to Shamrock, Texas, just for this reason. You are gonna kiss the Blarney Stone. This place was so bumping in the 1950s that the town leaders managed to convince Ireland to go get a piece of their sacred treasure, a piece of the actual Blarney Stone, and ship it to the middle of the Texas Panhandle. Apparently the Irish weren't too happy about it. Certain portions of the Irish, you know what I mean? And so in 1959, when it got here, it had to get here escorted by guards and transported in an armored truck. All right. Out of the way, pennies. Let me wet my beak here. Okay. Oh, it still works. I can still talk. Okay. All right, we'll move the lucky coins to the other side for London here. Give him a fresh patch of Blarney. London's protesting now. He says he's not from Ireland. He doesn't want to kiss a rock. Kiss the rock, boy, or you're grounded forever. Just like pecking a weird old lady on the cheek that you have to give a little kiss to. Just get over quick. Go ahead. Oh, that only took like seriously 30 minutes off camera of convincing. Where did you kiss it? I don't see it.
I don't know.
I don't see any lipstick marks. I don't see anything. Did you really kiss it?
Yes.
Well, you're talking more now, so hey, it must have worked. The Shamrock is one of these towns on Route 66 that is genuinely cool to spend time in. Because not only can you go leprechaun hunting down here, not only do you have the old cool movie theater that still plays movies, it has a Pioneer West Museum with old restored Western buildings. Also have tons and tons of epic old buildings, including this, a restored 1929 Magnolia gas station. Dude, you ever heard of Magnolia Gas? I thought not. I believe later it became Mobile, which we've all heard of now, and the Magnolia gave way to the Pegasus at some point. But this one's beautifully restored. Look at that old Shamrock fire truck there. Look at the ladies' restroom sign. There's something cool about seeing old restored gas stations full stop, but there's something even better when you're putting yourself in the mindset of an early Route 66 traveler. These things were brand new. It's like seeing a Tesla charging station for the first time. Consider in 1929, most people did not own an automobile yet. And so if you did own one, you were part of this new futuristic, cool thing. You had the wind at your back. You were free. You were out on the road traveling America. This was an ultra modern building and for all practical intents and purposes, the middle of nowhere just for you. Oil, tires, belts, spark plugs, all these new fancy things. That was 1929's cream of the crop, but it gets better. The insane Art Deco classic Route 66 neon lit up at night glory of the world famous You Drop In. More commonly known as the Conoco Tower or the Tower Station, this Art Deco masterpiece was built in 1936 and represents the next decade of the top tier of roadside gas station palaces. Now, if you're a Disney fan and you're thinking this building looks awfully familiar, well, you're correct. Because if you've ever seen the Disney Pixar movie Cars, this provided the inspiration for Ramones in Radiator Springs. And there's also a miniature version of this building in DCA in California. Historically, this place has always held two businesses. The cafe on the one side, which started out as the Tower Cafe, but has been better known since as the You Drop In. And then of course the Tower Station, the big gas station side, which also has a repair garage inside, and today holds the Shamrock, Texas Visitor Information Center and gift shop. This is one of the absolute glories, one of the icons of Route 66. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places, I think sometime in the 1990s, the late 90s. It became a Texas landmark in 1994, and restoration began at the end of the 90s into the early 2000s to restore it to its full former glory, which includes fixing all the neon. And if you think this place looks amazing by daylight, here are some photos of the way it looks at night. It is absolutely stunning and worth staying in town just to see this. Unfortunately, tonight, London and I have other plans. We're not staying in town, but there is a really nice Holiday Inn Express and something even better maybe. If you're into the rustic, more adventurous type of stuff, there's the Western Motel directly across the street. So you can be chilling in there, pop out at night like I did when I took those photos, and have the whole place to yourself. It's not just the outside that's restored, by the way. The inside of the gas station is restored. There are restrooms in there, working restrooms. How about that? I love that they've got this old truck in the bay here waiting to get restored. Hey, look at that. Is this a Ford? I don't see a girl, my lord. All right, take it easy, take it easy. Oh wait, that's Winslow, Arizona. This is a Studebaker. Anyway, then in the Visitor Information Center, which has visitor information in it, by the way, you've got a gift shop, some historic displays, a cool, creepy mannequin. And then in the You Drop In cafe itself, you've got all these plush, restored vinyl booths. The old counter is there. You can buy some little snacks. You can eat your lunch in there if you want to. Oh my gosh, I think they're actually serving ice cream and sandwiches in there again. They got the old jukebox going. Hey, and the staff inside are some of the friendliest folks you'll ever meet. This station is still a big deal, but you can even Just picture yourself in the 1930s coming across this after crossing the Panhandle, all that flat territory, and then suddenly there's this streamlined, beautiful Art Deco looking palace, like rolling up on a space station, especially at night with all that beautiful electric neon when most people in the country probably didn't even have electricity in their homes. This was such a fine sight to see, and it still is today. It's not just the U-Drop In that's restored, by the way. Across the street there's an ATM that's even all themed out to the Tower service station. It also lights up at night with green neon. And speaking of electricity and futuristicness, there's a Tesla charging station right back there. And one of the problems with traveling Route 66 is that a lot of these towns are very small. They only have a limited number of employees they can have at places, or volunteers in this case probably. On the sidewalks, it do tend to roll up pretty early, 2, 3 o'clock sometimes. Sometimes there's days where they just don't have volunteers and the places are closed, like maybe Mondays or Tuesdays or Sundays. This is why a lot of people argue that it's better to take a whole month and do Route 66 so that you can see everything and stay in every little small town. Now, I don't agree with that. I say if you've only got a week and a half, do it in a week and a half, pop in, look at this from the road and keep going if you have to. But when you are doing those long haul days, like today we're not even going that far. Total driving time if we never stop would probably be 3 or 4 hours. It can be one of the frustrating things that a lot of the neat places like this are going to be closed when you get there, much less you're not going to see it at night. So try to plan if you can for an overnight stay in Shamrock. It is worth it. Shamrock and Tucumcari, 2 must-stay-in towns just because of the gorgeous neon that's still there at night. There are so many epic gems like this, so many roadside wonders. I mean, none on this crazy level with the neon and this kind of architecture, but so many little old gas stations and tourist courts and old ghost towns like we've seen all day. There's a lifetime's worth of stuff to explore on Route 66, which is what keeps drawing me back partially. And between you and me, I'm considering this trip with my son more of a recon mission almost than anything else, because the 100th anniversary of Route 66 is coming up in just a year and a half from the time I'm standing here. And between now and then, I plan on spending as much time as I possibly can on the Mother Road in between other adventures, and doing much deeper dives into the history and little known places and little known stories. And I know there's so many people out there who had families who lived in places like this, or Jericho, or Oatman, or Seligman, who have stories and old pictures and tales to tell that haven't been told yet. And if you're one of those people, definitely get in touch with me. My email is so simple, it's just justin@randomland.com. If you need an answer from me quickly, then I would recommend emailing Tyler at randomland.com, because Tyler's back home in the command center. He can reply a lot faster than I can. But even if you're not comfortable being on camera, I'd love to hear those stories. I'd love to see those old pictures. I'm always trying to learn more about Route 66 and the American highways and byways. A group just reached out as I had finished filming that Twin Arrows video a few days, trying to restore Twin Arrows. They're working with the tribes. They're working with Arizona Historical Route 66 Association. You can actually help fix Route 66. I'll put the link down in the description for their GoFundMe. I absolutely love being a part of the Mother Road and learning its stories, and I love supporting all the mom and pop shops and the restoration efforts. So don't be afraid to get in touch. Sometimes I don't answer right away. I have the ADD. I completely forget to answer. Lots of times I look at stuff and I go, oh yeah, that's awesome, and I completely forget. So don't give up on me, Paul. And if you're thinking about taking a trip down the Mother Road, definitely bring the kids. Yes, they'll be bored sometimes. Yes, sometimes they'll want to sit in the car for a while and eat their Subway sandwiches. But this is such a great experience for everyone. The memories will last a lifetime. And you know what? It's gonna get pretty packed on the 100th anniversary. Might as well get out there now, huh? There's lots to see. I imagine even more stuff's gonna be open on the 100th anniversary year. Let's all work together to keep Route 66 alive. And speaking of keeping things alive, if you wanna help me and my family stay alive, and the show Random Land, there's lots of stuff in the description too. You can join the Patreon, that's a lot of fun. You can get a sick hat, you can get a t-shirt, you can order a copy of my new book, Tales from Random Land. But you know what? Just by watching this, sharing it with a friend, you've done me a kindness I feel like I can never repay, except for keeping the show on the road and bringing you more and more stories and adventures from America and beyond. You know what they say about Texas? If you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. Well, we started off rainy and cold and wearing our jackets, and now we forgot to put on sunscreen. We're a little sunburned. It's pretty darn hot out here. We're gonna go seek some shelter. We're gonna go give ourselves some food, and we're gonna keep on barreling down the Mother Road, because even though there's a little bit more to see in Texas, we've got to make it to Oklahoma tonight. The adventure continues. Make sure you're subscribed and all that other stuff that we all repeat over and over again if we have YouTube channels. The reason, look at the amount of subscribers and then look at the amount of views on all the videos. YouTube squishes everything down. So in order to reach everybody who even wants to know this information, you have to repeat yourself over and over and over and over again. So sorry about that. It's not my fault. Blame YouTube. And now, having said all that, I think we've done all we can do for one day. You know what that means, London? We've done our duty. It's time to motel and sleep well. See you next time. Get him. I'm trying to make sure he's not there. Is he in there? There's so much wood for him to be hiding under. Yeah, I was trying to find him so I could actually get him on camera. Dang it! Back to the 80s arcade. Oh no, it's closed. No, I want to go back to the 80s. Please, God, I want to go back to the 80s.